Hi.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, everyone.
So many familiar faces. This is
so many friends in this room. Oh my gosh.
Allie!
Except I did not put my face on, you guys.
Oh my gosh. Coach,
I didn't put my face on. I'm sorry. I'm freshly showered. It took me a while to get moving today. If anyone saw my Instagram stories, Allie.
Emily, your hair looks so good wavy like that. I love it.
It's just what happens when I get out of the shower.
Everyone
looks really good.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to do some introductions. Everybody, welcome. Happy Thursday. Welcome to our very first Caro Wine virtual wine tasting. We're really excited to have you all. This is also probably my biggest Zoom wine virtual tasting group ever, so it'll be a lot of fun. So I'm Dana Bruno, of course. I invited all of you today, and I just wanted to quickly first thank all of you for being with us. We know that virtual tastings are all the rage, and I'm sure you get tons of invites, so it really means a lot to us that you'd spend an hour with us drinking some delicious wine that we'll get into in a minute. Yeah, we really like our tastings to feel much more like an in-person happy hour versus, you know, a Zoom call. So please feel free to utilize the chat box or just jump in if you have any questions or comments. We're here to answer all of your questions, all of your pressing questions about pretty much anything. So with that, I would like to introduce this fabulous man over here, Philippe Rollet, the estate manager of Bodegas Caro, as well as Susan Castro, Vice President of Marketing and PR for Taub Family Selections, the importer, as well as Cedric Villar, Portfolio Director. Together, the four of us are going to kind of lead you today through the three wines that you have in front of you. So yeah, let us sit back and relax and transport ourselves and our taste buds to Argentina, which is where Philippe is. That is not a Zoom background. He is literally in the winery joining us today. Philippe, how are you? Tell us everything.
There we go. We are there.
Oh, you finally got it. Okay.
No. Oh, no, that's webcam.
Philippe.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Susanna and Cedric, for making this possible. This is the first tasting, virtual tasting of Bodega Caro, and I'm very glad to welcome you here in our aging cellars of the winery. We are in the middle of winter right now, and even if you don't think about it, we have a lot of snow everywhere, and it's cooler, it's warmer here than outside. That's why it's better at the moment to be inside the cellars than being outside, not in the snow. The snow is just in front of us on the Andes, but it's very, very, very cold here. We are in the middle of probably the best ski season of the last 20 years, I would say, in Argentina. And because of the COVID, none of the ski stations are open. So the best we have to do right now is being in the cellars and taking care of the wines. So just a very short introduction of who I am, shortly. I was born in Jura. My family is from Jura, from France, close to Switzerland. I was born in Arbois. And I studied in a master in Dijon, in Beaune. I worked for William Febvre from Chablis in France. Then I went to Chile, where I worked for a couple of years. And then I came back to Argentina. I came to Argentina in charge of Edonia Group. Edonia Group owns Alta Vista Winery in Argentina. It's quite a big winery. And I took care at that time of also Sansonnet Grand Cru of Bordeaux. And also Deresla in Tokai, who produce sweet wines. I stayed here 14 years. It's now almost 20 years since I've been living in Mendoza. After that, I worked for Alejandro Bulgheroni. Alejandro Bulgheroni is a very successful entrepreneur in Argentina. And he owns a lot of wineries throughout the world. You may know not him, but you probably know part of his winery. Renwood, for example, in California, or Dievole in Tuscany, or Garçon in Uruguay. And I was in charge of, at that time, the Argentinian project, which is Bodega Argento, and Bodega Otronia, which is very interesting. It's the southernmost winery of the world. And I've been working there for the last 5 years until 1 year and a half. I was offered to step in this project of Bodega Caro, which is absolutely unbelievable and has a terrible potential here. Bodega Caro was born 20 years ago of the alliance of Nicolas Catena with the fourth generation of winemaker in Argentina and Family Rothschild. There are 3 different branches of Family Rothschild right now involved in the wine business. You may have heard about Philippe de Rothschild, who owns Mouton Rothschild and Opus One, for example, in the United States. Other branch is Edmond Rothschild, who is owner of Chateau Clark in Bordeaux. And our branch, associated with this one joint venture with Nicolas Catena, is Lafite Rothschild. It's Eric de Rothschild, who owns Lafite Rothschild. And actually the name Caro comes from Catena and Rothschild. It was quite obvious name at that time, and which also means deer in Italian, which made sense for both partner. For both Eric de Rothschild, whose wife is Italian, and Nicolas Catena, who has his roots and came in Argentina, immigrated, his great-grandfather immigrated in Argentina 4 generations ago. So project was born 20 years ago, and the idea was to unify 2 cultures, French and Argentinian, 2 grapes, Malbec for sure, and Cabernet Sauvignon, and also the experience and the expertise of both family. If I should summarize those expertise, I would say that Nicolas Catena really brought his expertise and knowledge in Malbec and in the terroir of Argentina, while the Rothschild family brought all the experience of the Cabernet Sauvignon for sure, and also the aging of wine. And that's so that the project started 20 years ago. We used to call us or the project the art of blending contrasts, and I will be back to this concept with the different wines that we are going to taste. Really, everything is a question of contrast in this project. Well, first of all, just a word about the cellar and the winery where we are working. The winery was built in 1884. So it's one of the original and patrimonial winery of Argentina. When it was built at a suburb, in the suburb of the province of the city of Mendoza. At that time, in 1884, there was only 70,000 people living in the city. So it was built on the suburbs. And now, with the boom of Mendoza, we have a city of 1.5 million people. So virtually, physically, the winery is inside the city, and we are the last winery historical working within the city. I mean, within the city center. The winery was built in 1884, which was the golden age of the viticulture in Argentina. Just a quick back to the history. Basically, the main consumption center of wine in Argentina has always been concentrated in Buenos Aires, which is our capital city, which is 1,200 kilometers away. That's 800 miles. So before, at the very beginning of the wine industry in Argentina, wines needed to be shipped by horses to Buenos Aires, which meant 3 weeks of transport with barrels on sun, depending on the thirst of the people that were moving the barrels or moving the horse. So we can imagine that the wine didn't arrive always in a very good shape. In 1884, the train station, the railroad, arrived in Mendoza, and like a little bit the far west. It unified Mendoza to Buenos Aires in just 72 hours. And those was virtually the big boom of the wine industry. From one day to another, the center of consumption was very close to the center of production. And at that time, the winery boomed in Mendoza. We historically, one winery was opened every month. So this is part of our history. If you have a chance to come to Mendoza, I definitely invite you to visit our winery, which is impressive. Let's now take a little more about the wines that we are going to taste. Basically, the project was born with only 3 wines. This is our total range. We focus on red wines, and we focus from the very beginning with blend wines. And from 10 years ago, we created this wine, the first wine that we are going to taste today, which is Aruma. Aruma is a little different from the other members of the family that we are going to taste later. It's 100% produced from Malbec. I will make a very short explanation about Malbec in Mendoza for people that are not familiar with. Basically, Mendoza is a very desertic place. There was very few culture here in Mendoza until the middle of the 19th century. In 1952 or 1953, we had a French agronomist who had lived in Chile or went to Chile to study botanics that met with a very important person for Argentina, which is Sarmiento. Sarmiento was a Argentinian political guy that was in exile in Chile. He would become one very important president from Argentina, probably as important as Lincoln you have in the United States here for this country. And he was in exile in Chile and met this agronomist and offered him to go to cross the Andes, to get to Mendoza, to establish a farm, to define which culture would be suitable to develop the land of Mendoza. So he made the contact with the governor of Mendoza at that time, and he arrived here in 1851. Then he went back to France. He found out that the vineyards would be a possible culture for the zone. So he went back to France and brought a lot of grapes, varietal from France. And basically, he planted several of them, and one of them was Malbec. And he found out that it was very suited for the climate. It was actually the grapes that best developed on the zone. Actually, until 20 years ago, people here in Mendoza didn't talk about Malbec. They talked about the French grape. The French grape was the Malbec, and it was absolutely suited from here. So the introduction of Malbec is in 1853, 1854, not very far away from the time James de Rothschild buys his Chateau Lafite in France. And at that time, Chateau Lafite used to have also Malbec into its vineyards. I will just don't talk much about Malbec, but just will say something which is important that people generally don't know, is that the Malbec here in Mendoza is pre-phylloxeric. As I said, it was imported before of the phylloxera, and it was planted in Argentina. This Malbec was selectioned by several generations of viticulturists in Argentina to have a Malbec which is specifically suited or specifically adapted to the climate that we have in Mendoza. It is now quite different to the French Malbec, which was also, which developed also at that time in France. And basically now those two Malbecs are cousins. There's no brother anymore. They are cousins. And when we taste Malbec or we see Malbec from France, ampelographically, it's different from Malbec from Argentina. So both wines both grapes are different, not only because of the terroir where they are planted, but also because the ampelographical Malbec from Argentina differs a little bit from the one from France. So this wine, Aroma, is a 100% Malbec from Mendoza. Aroma means power of the night. Power of the night, why? Because in Mendoza, all our terroir, one of the specificity of the country is that all of terroir are terroir of altitude. Vines are planted from 18,000 feet to 5,000 feet in Mendoza, even higher if we go north of Argentina. And basically, the altitude offers a great effects on the style of wine for two reasons, basically. The higher we are, the most ultraviolet light we have on the berries. And because of this, usually the berries will protect the seed, which is the most important for it because it's the thing that allows the reproduction of the vine. So the berries will protect the seed with making a thick skin. And in the skin, we've got the tannins and the anthocyans, so responsible for flavor and color. So usually at higher altitude, we have better color and better concentration of tannins. The other thing is that when we are at higher altitude is that we have more fresh wind coming at night from the peaks of the Andes, which is always snow covered. So it means that we have fresher nights, which is better acidity. So this Aroma wine is a blend of different terroirs of Mendoza, all of it above 3,000 meters of altitude. And the particularity of this wine is that it wasn't aged at all in wood. It just, we really want to grab the fruit and put it on the bowl. So it's a wine which is simple, fruity, and is the real expression of what is the Malbec in Mendoza. I invite you to try it. In terms of vinification, all the grapes in our estate are unharvested. This one was also for sure unharvested. It was fermented in stainless steel. We make usually short maceration for this wine because we want to have the best fresh fruit. So that means usually 15, 18 days of maceration, pump over every day, usually 1 or 2 délestages. And then the wine will be kept in stainless steel or concrete vats for approximately 1 year before for its maturation, before it's put in bottle and sent to the market. I don't know if, I can't see anybody, so I don't know if you are also tasting this wine right now.
They are all tasting it. It's really fun to see. What's everyone think?
It's a beautiful wine. Philippe, what I really enjoyed about Aroma, you know, the 100% Malbec is there are a lot of Malbec. I find that they're very big, you know, that the big fruit like in your face. And I think that one is actually very drinkable and very fresh. That's a term that you've used as well in that high, you know, altitude terroir. And the freshness that you get into that wine is that makes that wine beautiful. Could you tell us a little bit about the vintage as well, 2018 vintage in Mendoza?
Yes. Generally speaking, we have 3 kinds of vintage in Mendoza. We have either humid cold, dry cold, or dry warm. I would say that the most general vintage is dry warm. You may have noted that there's one kind of vintage that we don't have, which is humid and warm. That would be Brazil. We don't want it. So either we are humid and cold, or then dry cold, or dry and warm. I would say that 50% of the vintages in Mendoza are probably dry and warm. This is the characteristic of this one. The vintages that we are tasting later, which is 2017, are dry and cold. And you can see we can detect differences in terms of style. Basically, this is 2018 was a easygoing vintages. And one of the things is that because it was warm and dry, we had a lot of differences of temperature between night and day. When I say a lot of differences of temperature of night and day, it's probably 14 Celsius degrees. That would be 57 Fahrenheit between night and day. So that's huge. It means that really during the daytime you are in t-shirt, and at night you definitely need something, a coat, because it's real cold. All of this because of the snow of the Andes.
Philippe, I know you can't see, but we're getting a lot of really great feedback. Clive says he agrees with Cedric on the freshness, but also a fair bit of minerality as opposed to purely fruit-forward Malbec, which I think is often the case. Other people said it smells incredible. They get some violet. Drew says he gets blackberry balsamic marinade. Oh, that he's been enjoying. It reminds him of that. Like a fruit bomb. Lots of berry, cherry, and Murray. Kim Backer says cherries. Nicole says nice raspberry and balsamic notes. Oh, Amanda from Real House Wine says it reminds her of the Cahors. That's cool. Yeah, totally. I could agree with that.
Great.
So for aroma, Philippe, is there a temperature that you recommend? Like I've heard that sometimes people like to actually like enjoy a little fresh, you know, like a little cool.
Yes.
Or
This is a wine definitely where we try to grab the fruit. So I would say that even if this wine can age, I would recommend first of all to drink it young, because that's where it shows all its power of fruit. It can age, but I prefer it young. And then in Argentina, we in the past we used to drink wine too hot. I mean, room temperature in Argentina during summertime, room temperature can be 25 degrees Celsius. So that's, I don't know in Fahrenheit, but that's very far away. It's too much. So I usually try to drink this wine cooler than the other brothers in the range, around, I would say 55, 57 Fahrenheit. If that's too cold, anyway, it's easier to warm it in your glass than cool it on your glass. So it's always better to pour it a little cooler so that you can always warming it. So yes, I love it at a little cooler than normal or more complex wine.
And I see that Becky would like to hear about any food pairing recommendations. I think, Dana, you had received some previous questions as well about food pairing for some of those wines.
Yeah, you know, I will try to, I know more Argentina food than American food, but I try to make a parallel. Here in Argentina, we have the lomo. The lomo is like a burger from the United States with a pita bread and a sirloin, thin cut of meat. And this wine is perfect with lomo. I mean, it's an easygoing wine. And I believe that in the United States, it would be perfect with a burger. I mean, a juicy burger where you have tomato ketchup, which is a little bit sweet and sour with some pickles. I believe that the sweetness of this wine would go very nicely. And to be honest, it's a wine that doesn't need to support any food. So you don't need, it would pair very good with a good burger, juicy burger, but also just with friends, before with a barbecue, with a party. It's easygoing. I mean, for me, it's a wine that would pair even better with friends than with food.
And Cindy's burger with blue cheese sounds amazing too. Maybe I'm just hungry.
I'm hungry now. We got a question from Clive. He said that He's curious about the soil types in the various vineyards and how, Philippe, you feel that, how you believe that impacts the mineral characteristics.
Yeah, you know, in Mendoza, we have a lot of different soils. What I tried to explain it simply. In Mendoza, the climate is very dry. We are in semi-desertic climate. We receive 300 millimeters of water per year, which is approximately 1 inch of water. But this water is concentrated on very strong rains or very strong events. I mean, it doesn't rain a lot, but when it rains very strongly. So usually what's happening is that the soil is not prepared to absorb the water. I mean, the soil is, when it's raining a lot into the mountains, it floods, the water floods down, and then it will create rivers that will, according to the geological age, take several paths. That creates what we call alluvial fans. It means that alluvial fans, it means that at the foot of the Andes, you've got those rivers that in the past flooded going down. So one characteristic of the soils of Mendoza is that it's all alluvial. And I would probably be back to this later on. And which means alluvial, which means pieces of the Andes that went down and that were brought by the river. And in there, we've got a lot of different kind of soil. We have a very rich kind of soil and subsoil in Mendoza. We have granitic sand, which is the most common, but we have also clay in some parts, depending on the lower lands, or where if a river recently flowed nearby. When I say recently, it's 10,000 years ago or 20,000 years ago. It's not 1 century ago. Or we may have calcareous. So in this specific aroma, we have different kind of soil. I wouldn't say that there is one particular soil, as we are going to taste with later other wine. This is basically a patchwork of different kind of soil and subsoil. And you can find minerality depending probably more on the granitic or on the calcareous type of soil than clay, which is usually different and don't show as much as minerality.
Nice.
Hello?
Should we get into the, yeah, Amancaya?
We go to Amancaya. So Amancaya was the second wine of the winery. I mean, it was created at the very beginning. The first vintage was 2000, and this is really the aim, the heart of the project. The heart of the project is our blended wine, and this is what we produce, our specialty, which is a blend of Malbec and Cabernet Sauvignon. Why Malbec and Cabernet Sauvignon, and why do they fit very well? Cabernet Sauvignon, you probably know, is more kind of reductive grape, and on the reverse, Malbec is more oxidative. So with blending those two grapes, we are balancing the redox capacity of the wine, which makes usually wines that are more complete than each of them produced separately, at least in Mendoza. This Amancaya is also produced over 3,000 feet on vineyards that are mainly on the Valle de Uco. Valle de Uco is the south of Mendoza. It differs from the north of Mendoza because in Valle de Uco, in the north of Mendoza, all vineyards are in front of the Precordillera. Precordillera is, to make it simple, 9,000 feet high. But we are not in front of the highest peak of the Cordillera, which is mainly 18,000 feet. or 15 to 18,000 feet, which are the ones that are found in the south of Mendoza, approximately 120 kilometers, 80 miles south of Mendoza. So this wine comes from both places, but mainly the south of Mendoza, where usually we find more tension. Wine with higher or more differences of temperature night and day, which produce more, usually more acidity, and you are going to taste it. It's a wine that is more tense. Before we taste it, some changes. You have the vintages 2017 as I do, which is the old label of the winery. Right now we are now producing with the 2018 a new label, which is there. This is a Jeroboam, very nice Jeroboam. We have 10 of them which are going to United States by next week, and you can see the new label here with a very nice flower, which is the flower of Amancaya. Amancaya is the name of this flower. It's a flower that can be found on our vineyards on the mountains. It's not an easy you can't find it very easily, and the story tells that native people when they wanted to engage with a woman would first look for one of these flowers and then gave it to the woman, and if she would accept, then they would engage and probably marry. So this is the origin of the name of Amancaya that you can see here on this picture.
Is it possible to zoom on the new label for friends? So is that a true story, Philippe?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
We had a coworker a couple of years ago that couldn't find the flower, so they proposed with a bottle of Amancaya.
Yeah, and it worked.
It did.
She said yes, and she actually visited you guys after on the honeymoon in Mendoza.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. We have also some people that have engaged here, either at the winery, or we have a very nice restaurant just in front of the winery, which is owned by the chef Malman, who also was a place where people engaged with a bottle of Amancaya. So that's a nice story. And the wine here is we are entering in another dimension of complexity if I compare it to Aroma. Basically, I'm sure, pardon, ahí va mejor. So here we are going into another dimension of complexity. Basically, this was a cold, as I said, a cold and dry year. You can see that the finesse of the tannins are different from Aroma. You're going to find a lot of spices, mocha. Well, I had to taste, and very fine tannins. It's also one particularity of this vintage, which I think is very, very elegant because of the coldness.
So while everyone's tasting, we had another question, Philippe, from Drew. He asked, there's another type of stone in Mendoza. It falls from the sky. Very large hailstones, granosas, ? They can ruin the vines. Can you talk about this a little bit and about the airplanes that fly into the clouds that set off and stop hail?
Yeah, we have, this is probably our major problem in Argentina. We have two different kind of problems in Argentina, which are basically very simple. First of them is ants. It looks like something maybe odd, but we are in the middle of the desert, so ants can be very aggressive, and we have one kind of ants that cut the leaf of the vines. So usually they started on the first vine, they climb up they climb on the wire, and then when they destroyed one plant, they will go to another, and then go on. And the other problem that we face in Argentina is hail. It's very easy to, or it's quite easy to understand. Let's take this. Let's imagine that this is the Andes Cordillera. And here we've got on this side, we've got the Pacific Ocean. So Pacific Ocean is humid and cold. So we have permanent wind that comes from Pacific Ocean, will climb up the Andes, and then go in direction to Buenos Aires on the other side. Here we are in Mendoza, on the other side of the hill. And basically, this place, all this place is protected from this humid air by the Andes Cordillera. Very high mountains. We are talking about 18,000 feet and up. So what's happening is that during normal day, nothing happens. I mean, it's here, the warm air stays on this side and just keep there. So it's just our normal day of summertime. But when we have very, very hot days during usually the months of December and January, which is the summertime here, then this warm air will grow up and take a lot of energy. And when it has a lot of energy, and you know that warm air is going up while cold air is going down, this warm air will perforate, will go through this flood of fresh air, humid fresh air. So basically we mix humidity and humid cold air with very hot dry air, and this produces what we call the cumulonimbus, those clouds that look like a nuclear mushroom, and from this those clouds produce hail. I have never seen so much damage of hail in my life before coming to Argentina. I mean, when we have an hailstorm in Europe, it may destroy 200 hectares, let's say 400 acres. Here, it will destroy 20 times this. I mean, we are, it's going to be, it can destroy up to 8,000 acres on a single storm. So what we do is that we seed, when those clouds are forming, we have planes that will seed those clouds in order to move them, or to what it makes, basically to make it simple, to form an hail, you need a small piece of sand, and around this piece of sand, the ice will form, and when the ice will be weighty enough, it will go down. So what we do with planes is that we seed those clouds in order that if there's a sand or small pieces of sand into these clouds, it will not be able to glue some water that will become ice, so that it doesn't produce hail. But this is theory. In the practice, we have storms that are so intense that even the best pilot, even the best plane cannot approach it, and we cannot seed all of them. So it means that it protects part of the production, but not all of them. That's why in Mendoza, most of the vineyards are protected by net in order to protect the production from the destruction of hail. We are not only protecting the crops in terms of volume, but also in terms of quality. Because even if there's a small hail, if this hail touch some berries in the grape or the berries or the grape will lose its quality. So it's important for us to have a protection 100% from hail, not only in terms of volumes of production, but mostly in terms of quality of grape.
Philippe, that's amazing. Thank you for those explanations. I see a lot of comments about people love that wine. I think it's a very like a more elegant wine. I think it's very refined. I think it's very balanced. Often we kind of hear about, you know, that Lafite spirit, you know, like a certain style of the wine that they kind of like to make. What does that mean for you? What is it? What is it to work for Rothschild and Catena, and the style of the wine you try to make it? And what's your secret? Like, how do you get to that style of wine?
Our main concept here of this project is elegance. We have never looked for power in terms of Malbec can bring a lot of power, but basically the blend with Malbec and Cabernet is really looking for elegance. And the other thing that helps us a lot, apart from a specific choice of vineyard where we are looking for specific soil and subsoil, the other thing that helps us a lot with the elegance is the aging. Rothschild is one of the few Premier Cru, Grand Cru in France that owns its own cooperage, and we actually Lafite produce approximately 2,000 barrels a year. 1,000 are reserved for their properties in France. I mean, not only Lafite, but also Rieux-Sec, which produces Sauterne, and L'Evangile in Pomerol. And then approximately one of them are reserved for the properties outside France. Longdai in China, Los Vascos in Chile, Auxerre, also a very nice property in the south of France, which was once owned by Napoleon Bonaparte. And we are lucky to, in this cellars here, we have probably 80% of the barrels that are coming from the Lafite cooperage. This allows us a very precise origin. We buy precise origin of wood with fine grains. Then we can manage and control the aging or the drying of the woods, and then also the fire or the heat within the process of making a barrel. And I would say that usually the woods that we are looking is or produced for Lafite barrels are finer and doesn't mark or give so much on the nose, but is very a wood that will help and structure the wine. So it's wood that, it's barrels that needs long time to age. In this case, Amancaya spent 12 months in French oak, and it really needs this time to get all of the flavors of the, and the mix and the structure of the barrels. And it's really one of the reasons why we have this elegance, and partly because of the grapes, the origin where we source our grapes, and also because of this aging. I don't know if there's more questions.
Mostly just a lot of comments, a lot of very good comments.
I think someone had asked what the pairing would be with Amancaya.
Food pairings.
Yep.
In Mendoza, I would pair it with, in Mendoza, because of the desert here, we have a lot of goats. So usually we cook the goats directly on a cross, directly on fire. I don't know if you've seen it. Maybe you have seen it, some picture from Argentina, from the complete goat in form of cross into the fire. For sure, this is not easy to find in the United States, I think, but I would definitely pair it with lamb chops or lamb rack, with some herbs in it. I think that the wine is juicy, it's complex. Basically, it makes droll. And with a meat which is a little greasy, like it has also a very good acidity. So with a meat which is also a little bit greasy, with like lamb, it works very well.
Wonderful. So I think we're going a little bit, we have about 10 minutes left. So I think we could
Okay.
go into the final wine if everyone's ready to move on. And again, if you have any questions, please ask the chat box and we will definitely get to them.
So the big brother is Caro. Well, it's simple. It's the name of the winery, basic. It's our top wine, and it's special for us because it's not produced every year. I mean, the first vintage was 2000, but within the story of the estate, there are at least two vintages that we didn't produce it. And we are not obliged to produce it every year. I mean, we really do it when the vintage allows it. We don't have any objective in terms of production. So production so far varies between 3,000 cases and 5,000 cases. It's a very scarce production. And we have no objective. I mean, it's really the best that we can produce on this year. What makes it special? I told you earlier that we have alluvial fine in Mendoza, which means that depending on the river, where a river flow in the past, we may have a kind of soil and a subsoil, but something like 100 meters away, which is a few feet away, we may have a complete different soil. So what we have been doing now for 7 or 8 years in Caro, we started a complete study of our soil and subsoil, because we noticed that when we were walking into the vineyards, we had plants very different, and this is because of soil and subsoil. So we started to dig and to make a map of subsoil, and this allowed us to make a map of our vineyards. So to divide plots that were planted at that time because of one or another reason, we noticed that within those plots, we have 2, 3, 4 different kinds of soil and subsoil. And what we are looking for this wine in our specific vineyards is soils where we are more calcareous. Why? Because in Mendoza, we have a lot of sun. We have probably 300 days of sunshine, which means that what we are looking for is tension, is more natural acidity. And basically, when you see vines or wines that have been produced on soils with a lot of acidity, usually those wines as not a lot are basic, the lack of acidity. For example, if usually vines planted on granitic soil would have low acidity, while wines planted on calcareous will have high acidity. This is one of the reasons, for example, in Champagne, La Côte des Blancs is planted everything on calcareous soil, and that's why they've got one of the best acidity in Champagne. So now we are focusing for 6 or 7 years in finding those places where we have more calcareous, so that we'd have more tension and more acidity. And we also manage within our plots a different vineyard management, a different irrigation management, and usually we have different time of harvest depending on the places and soil and subsoil, up to 15 days between different kind of soil or subsoil. So this is the 17. It was a proportion of Malbec and Cabernet Sauvignon. I should have said that in Amancaya, usually the wine is Malbec based, and then with a part of Cabernet Sauvignon. In Caro, we have no rules. We have absolutely no rules. It's the best that we produce this year, depending on if it was a vintage hot, cold, warm or not. And in this vintage, it's basically Malbec, 74%, 26. But for example, if you have a chance to taste the vintage before, which is 2016, which was a humid and cold vintage, completely. This one is dry and cold. The former was humid and cold. In this case, the Cabernet Sauvignon outperforms the Malbec, and then therefore we have a majority, big majority, almost 70% of Cabernet Sauvignon. So that's a blend which is totally different. This one is based on Malbec.
Awesome. And we had, Philippe, we had a couple of questions, something that we were just discussing prior to the call, actually, which is, would you recommend opening the Caro ahead of serving, or how long would you let it breathe, etc.? Okay.
Today, I open the bottle something like half an hour before this tasting. I love, well, we have two options. For those wines, as you can see, the wine is very young, 2017. If you put in the nose, you can see that it's still closed. And that's a wine that needs some time to open itself. From this, all depends the taste of everybody. Some people like just to open it, pour it into a decanter, and then serve it. That's an option, and that's valid. I don't have anything against it. In my personal taste, I'm more patient, and I usually give the wine the time to open and develop himself. So I prefer open the bottle. And in this case, I know that this wine needs specifically half an hour, 3/4 of an hour of opening, but I prefer not to decant it because it would burn some stages, in my opinion. So I would recommend to open it at least 1 hour before tasting. And right now, if you just open the bottle, just give him, taste it right now, but give him 10 minutes into your glass, and please come back to it in 10 minutes, because you can see that it's a wine that rewards the patience. It's definitely a wine that needs to be interpreted, and it will reward you if you can just be a little bit patient.
I think it's a beautiful wine, Philippe. I think it's really one of the best wine you can find in Argentina right now. And that wine has also amazing potential for aging, right? I remember one of the first, you guys gave me a Magnum of 2002, like some years ago, and you guys told me during the special occasions, of course, first thing I did, I brought it to France, right? And we had it in Corsica on the summer with my family with a barbecue. It was the most amazing experience. And you see that wine, that potential of aging, and such a beautiful wine. There's also kind of a touch of Bordeaux in that wine. It's a beautiful, and I'm very excited about the next vintage is coming up as well. But congratulations.
No, we are still learning. We are still learning about the aging of our wines, to be honest, and the style of the Argentinian wines that were produced 20, 30 years ago is different from the ones that we produced 20 years ago, and we are every day a little more precise, a little more knowledgeable about our terroir, and I believe that the best Argentinian wine, we have produced very, very nice Argentinian wine, I would say from 2000, but the best Argentinian wine are to come. Believe me, because not only in Caro, but in Argentina in general, the knowledge of the winemaker, and also a more important part taken now by the viticulturist, which is the basics. I mean, you won't be able to produce a good wine without a good berries or good grapes. The viticulturists are now stepping up and more knowledgeable, and I believe that this helps the whole category of Argentina to grow up in the highest segment. So the best wines from Argentina, you can see an evolution in the last 5-7 years, but I believe that the best is coming on. And in the case of Caro, we have also very nice vintage in front of us that are still on the barrels beside me to come.
Fabulous.
I love the fact as well that the respect of the terroir, right? And that you adapt, like to the weather, like every year, the Malbec or the Cabernet Sauvignon, it's really beautiful.
Yeah. And there's also a variety that is very promising that I know. I should have said that the project started with Eric de Rothschild and Nicolas Catena. And now both men gave the authority of the business to their daughter, which is Laura Catena and Saskia Rothschild. And both Saskia and Laura are very interested and in love with Cabernet Franc. So there's also possibility in the future that Cabernet Franc enters in our blends. I don't know at which stages, but that's a very promising grape here in Argentina.
Do we have more questions, Daniel?
Yeah, a couple more questions. I had a question from Marlena. She was wondering how long do all the wines age after being bottled?
I would answer that for good vintages, without doubt, 20 years. The oldest vintage that we have is 2020. It's 2000. Sorry, it has 20 years and is still alive. And it wasn't necessarily the best vintage of the decade. If I look to very nice vintage of the past decade, which were 2002, 2005, 2007, they are still vivid and alive. So I would say today, as a short answer, is 20 years for the past. For the new generation of wines that we are producing now, that have more tension, that are probably a little more acidity, I don't know. But it will, without doubt, be more or be longer. They will live longer than the ones that we produced in the decade of the 2000. So 20 years for good vintage at least.
Got it. And I think just a couple more questions. Kaylee had asked, are there tours of the winery people can go on during normal times, not during COVID, of course?
Yeah, sure. The winery is open to public every day to visit, to tours. Because we are city center, we also are the only winery that offers tours at night. So we have a lot of people coming here at let's say 8 p.m. that will make a tour, taste the wine, and they'll go to a restaurant nearby, because you can go to several restaurants here, buy food. So it's a very nice option. So yes, we are open to visit. We also have a place at Caro which is called La Nef, which is a cultural center where we have permanent exhibition of art. We also host projection of films and events, any kind of event, cultural. So it's a very nice place to visit. So if you come to the winery, you would be interested for sure by the wine, by the tour, but also by an artistic offer or cultural offer of Argentinian and Mendocinian culture.
Really wish we could jump on a plane right now.
Yes.
I would be open right now. To be honest, Argentina is a quarantine, and our exhibition. We are going to host on our Instagram by next week a virtual vernissage of the new La Nef exposition. So it would be on our Instagram on next week. But it's going to be virtual for everybody, not only from people from the United States, but even for Argentinian, because we are under quarantine here.
And I think the last thing, do we talk about food pairings for the Caro?
I would say a good ribeye. I would say without doubt. We have one of the best. I know in the United States you have a very, very good meat. But we also here are probably one of the best meat of the world. This is explained by basically we have flatlands in a lot of places in Argentina, so the cows doesn't climb, and they are naturally naturally bred, and it produces a succulent meat. Usually the meat here is not aged. Traditionally in Argentina, the aging is 1 week or 10 days. But now we see more and more restaurants that are aging, dry aging the meat, like you in the United States. And definitely, I would accompany this wine with a good ribeye. There's for sure a lot of other pairing possible, but here in Argentina, with the meat, without doubt.
Well, awesome. So, all right, we're just a few minutes over. Awesome. You guys, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, it was our first tasting, so we just so appreciate your time and all your wonderful comments, all your wonderful questions. Did I get to everything? Does anyone have any other comments or questions or anything? Philippe, we're just hearing lots of praise and lots of wonderful comments. We can read them later. They're great. Everyone loved the wines and the presentation, of course. So yeah, if there's no other questions, you guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
And thank you for the great presentation.
Thank you, Cedric.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah.
And I'll be in touch with follow-up images, text you everything you guys need and any more questions. But so good to see. Oh my God, like so many awesome faces, so many friends. So have a great rest of your week, guys, and cheers, of course.
Cheers.
Cheers.
See you soon, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.